In a world overrun by neocon warmongers, and with the mass media in the pockets of the cabal elite, there remains one bastion of truth amidst the confusion. One beacon of light shining through the murky fog of spin and Islamophobic propaganda. That's right, it's the MP Radio Security Council. The final frontier in the fight for freedom and fairness. I give you the Security Council.
أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان. دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني. أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان. دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني. سائر في طريق الحق يا جند الله.
Assalaamu'alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Security Council, and you've tuned into Middle Path Radio every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. The Security Council sit and convene around some of the most pressing world issues, and we'll be discussing quite a few of them tonight. I'm your brother Ahmed, and our hotline number is 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. You can also contact us on Twitter, of course. Our Twitter handle is at Middle Path Radio. That's all one word. That's at Middle Path Radio. We'd love to hear calls from yourselves. You can also just drop us a text message if you're shy, but there's nothing to be hesitant about. Just give us a call. It's 07477 080 248, and if you're calling from abroad, then you do need to add +44, then it's 7477 080 248. Okay, so brothers and sisters, with me today in the studio we have, let's say, from the shadows, who lurks behind the iron curtain that stands behind the Security Council. We have Mr. Producer. Assalaamu'alaikum, Mr. Producer.
Walaikum salam.
And how you doing today, bro? You okay?
I don't know if you can tell with my voice. It's not the reverb on the new settings. It actually is my voice, so I'm not.
Yeah, I can hear your. I can hear. Yes, you're a little bit bunged up, as they say in East London. Adjective. Well, we wish you a speedy recovery. It is quite cold where we are, and I can see you're wearing your trademark woolly hat.
That's a giveaway.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not sure if that's part of your permanent member Security Council uniform, as some of the other generals and colonels that we have sitting on this panel, ranging from Robert the Beast Mugabe in his camo military uniform.
Is that the yellow and the blue one?
He has been known to be wearing all forms of costumes, as I like to describe them, but we're able to say this tonight because Robert the Beast Mugabe is no longer with us on tonight's program, and what a relief that is. He, I think there's a little bit of difficulty he's having, let's say, at visiting the embassy, so we wish him also a quick recovery, and also one of the spiritual leaders. He's also not here today, and you know, we are talking about Desmond Two Guns. He's quite a different, radical form of a spiritual leader, and he's been called away on some urgent business.
He's got the voice, hasn't he? He's got the voice.
Indeed, and he's got the look. He's got that spiritual look. You know, Desmond Two Guns.
A combo hand in hand.
That's it. I mean, he needs to have that. I don't know. He needs to have one of those gun straps that, you know, conceals the two revolvers behind his waist in the back. I don't know if it was Nicolas Cage who had one of those. Oh man, what a!
I know the one you're talking about. The ones you can get from watchable stools.
Yeah, one of those. That's the one he's actually got. Anyways, so we have a variety of issues that we want to talk about, and yes, the Security Council, we do take a very informal, sometimes, you know, let's say light-hearted, even comical sometimes, attitude towards some of the world news. Some of the stories that we come across are so grotesque, oftentimes outrageous, but the thing is that they're all 100% true and they're real. And oftentimes to kind of register and process some of these things, the human mind, it tends to process it by making light of some of these things in order to just barely absorb and register some of the realities, and oftentimes those realities are extremely harsh. So we'll be talking about one of those instances today. One is we're talking about the American Sniper tonight. I know Mr. Producer is a big movie buff. I'm just joking. Quite the opposite. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about American Sniper. And if you've got any views on that, okay, so and if you've watched the film, I don't know if it's already out. Like I said, I'm not very much of a, I'm not up to date with that kind of thing. But it's in the news, and it's creating a lot of controversy. Let's put it that way. And if you've got some of your views about what you thought about American Sniper, if you've seen it or if you've got your own, angle on it, then yeah, get in touch with us on 07 477 080 248. The other thing that we'll be talking about after we give this introduction, we'll be going on a short break. Quite an important thing, especially here in the UK. And it's very important, and I'm not sure. I'd like to know if brothers and sisters and ladies and gentlemen who are listening and who may be able to hear this later on YouTube, as we do upload all of our live shows onto YouTube. So go to subscribe to our channel. So if you are listening to this, we'd like to know if you're even aware of a new bill that the government proposes to pass. It's called the Counter-terrorism and Security Bill. It's the CTSB in abbreviation. And as far as we know, this is pretty much already in the final stages of having been passed. If it hasn't already been passed, I believe it's pretty much a closed case right now. It's a done deal. They are going to pass this. There has been some huge resistance on a community-led initiative by people in the community, ranging from voices in the Muslim and non-Muslim community. So we'll be talking about the Counter-terrorism and Security Bill, and maybe you can even come back and tell me what you think of the name, and if this is even a suitable name, if that's even an honest name, and maybe you can tell me what the name even means. What is terrorism? What's the definition of that? What is the counter-terrorism that they're talking about? And maybe you can also give us your views as to what you think, what kind of security measures the UK actually really needs, and who this security would be for. Are we talking about security for Jews? Are we talking about security for non-Muslims against fears of extremism or terrorism in the Muslim community? Or are we talking about saving or providing security for Muslims who may be now experiencing a huge spike in violent Islamophobia and racism? So give us your views on 07 477 080 248. Mr. Producer, we're going to be going to a short break. There's one last agenda that we'd like to discuss. And actually, we tweeted earlier on, and I would like to say we'll probably just make a light mention of it just to stay, consistent with our tweets. And we did say we're going to talk about how the BBC Arabic wing or sister organization of BBC, some of the editors there have been saying that they do not like the idea. Well, they've chosen not to call the Paris attack or the attackers, or the shooters in Paris. They refrain from using the word terrorist to describe them as such. And they have explained their reasoning behind this, and they've even made references to some of their BBC policy and guidelines on that. So we'll be taking your views, Mr. Producer. You wanted to say something just there for a second?
No, I was just going to say, is this just in Arabic or is it a reflection on the English as well?
I'm afraid, the policies are for both, across the board, Arabic and English of BBC, but the decision to not use the word terrorist to describe those killers or the shooters was the decision of just that Arabic BBC editor.
Well, I would love to get my teeth into that.
That would be very interesting how it works. Why would there be a difference between the Arab BBC and the English BBC? We're going to go for a very quick break, after which we'll be hearing a little bit more about the Counter-terrorism and Security Bill. Catch you straight after this break. Assalamu'alaikum.
لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي يحيي ويميت لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. There is no God but Allah. He is one, He has no partner. To Him dominion, to Him the praise. He brings life, death and life again. In His blessed hand is all goodness and He has power over everything. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu yuhyi wa yumitu biyadihi al-khayr wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Subhanallah hamdan lillah la ilaha illallah Allahu akbar walillahil hamd. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu yuhyi wa yumitu biyadihi al-khayr wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. There is no God but Allah.
You're listening to The Security Council, a zero-bull, straight-talking, current affairs program.
Welcome back and Assalaamu'alaikum to all our listeners, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. This is your brother Ahmed, and with me in the studio, as always, is Mr. Producer. And we've just already given you a rundown on all the different types of agendas that we'll be covering tonight. One of them that we should start off with is the Counter-terrorism and Security Bill that is being rushed through Parliament just as we speak. Now, commentators are already making the conclusive observation, should I say, that this is already a done deal, and it's a closed case. To be honest with you, the government ministers, the Lords, they all seem to be quite adamant to see this bill come into a reality and become enshrined in law. So you might be asking yourself, what is this counter-terrorism bill? Counter-terrorism and security bill, and what kind of, why is it a big deal? And I think it's important for us to go through some of the basic things without getting too technical. I myself would not be able to kind of even fathom some of the legal jargon and semantics that is used in the very let's say complicated wording of some of these bills. But the good people who do understand, they have summarized things for us. I will say, go definitely check out their website. Is it www.stopthebill.co.uk? Go check them out. Also go visit Cage website. They're called Cage UK. Go find them on Twitter at Cage UK, I believe. And they've written extensively about this bill as well. So what does this bill do? If you already know, or you disagree with us, or you've got your own view or perspective, perhaps you think that this is a bill that is absolutely necessary to safeguard the public and the interests of British citizens here in the UK, then by all means get in touch with us on 07 477 080 248. That's 07 477 080 248. So, in short, what exactly does this bill do? Mr. Producer, I understand you've got an infographic somewhere near to yourself. Do you have that in front of you at all? Or?
Yes, I do.
Yeah?
I've actually even tweeted it as well.
Yeah.
So if there's anybody out there on Twitter and they want to actually see what we're reading from,
Do you want to start with maybe one of the first kind of icons there? What will the bill actually do? This is good for people like us, who maybe haven't got all the time to sit there and digest the entire wording of the full bill. But this infographic's very informative. So go
how do I
straight.
choose? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo?
Start from the left, I guess, where you're talking about passport.
Passport seizures.
Yeah.
It basically allows the Home Secretary to seize passports of anybody that is leaving the UK if a person is suspected of terrorism-related activities.
Interesting. So this bill allows the government, the Home Secretary, to seize the passports of the people who are maybe traveling abroad. And all they need to do to seize these people's passports. Now, this is a big thing. Let's just talk about seizing one's passport. It means they become effectively, they get rendered stateless. They no longer have any way of proving their identity or their nationality. So they'll have their passports seized. And they will be questioned, of course. So we'll come into that in a second. But some people have had their citizenships revoked. I'm not sure if this bill actually covers that, or whether the word passport seizure here also refers to this. So what happens is those people now tend to be people who don't have any claim to a state or a what's the word I'm looking for when they go abroad. You have your embassy and you have your British Council or whoever you sometimes, if you need help, High Commission. That's those kind of people. But if you no longer have any citizenship, if you're suspected of terrorism related activity, then tough luck. You're no longer a Brit anymore.
So I mean, there's a word here. It says suspected. Okay, and I think that's the biggest kind of word. That's kind of like the elephant in the room. That's really.
And there's another word which is called terrorism.
Yeah, well, that's the elephant in the room.
And there's another one that says terrorism related.
The question is, who defines suspected? I mean,
Yeah.
anybody going to say any Middle East country, does that make them a suspect?
Yeah, I mean, what do you base your suspicions on? Anybody's information, any kind of intel, any kind of tip-off, any kind of phone call, or is it a racial profiling, the skin color of this person? Like you said, just the nature of his travel, going to anywhere in the Middle East. Does that constitute a sufficient level of alertness, or should that be raising flags? Just the fact that he's a Muslim, he seems to be traveling to the Middle East. He seems to have a history of traveling abroad to maybe not just Middle East, but maybe Pakistan, other related areas, maybe Somalia. Okay, so does that automatically make them a suspect? And then, as you said, I mean, we could really take this apart, but we do need to find out about how and what basis, what the criteria is for suspicion. And if they're saying it's terrorism related activity, I mean, first of all, exactly what on earth is terrorism? What's the legal definition for terrorism? And if there is a legal definition for terrorism, is it the case that this legal definition is being applied properly and across the board? Is it being applied universally to all, cases of alleged terrorism or terrorism-related activity? So that's a really important thing to find out. What is terrorism? What's the legal definition of terrorism? Is terrorism-related activity? Now, adding the word related activity, Mr. Producer, what do you think comes under related activity? What kind of guess do you think? I mean, looking at the track record,
there are hundreds and thousands of people that are giving money to charity, and especially with Charity Commission going after certain charity organisations. Does that constitute in terrorism related? Is that related? Could it be related?
Yeah, I mean, these are the kind of questions that are in the air. That's a very genuine angle you've taken there, and I know that a lot of the charities have had their accounts closed by the Charity Commission here in the UK on the suspicion that some of the money is going to Palestine, for example, or Syria. Some allegations have come to check and investigate whether the money is going into the hands of, let's say, Hamas or other rebel factions in Syria. Hamas being the elected government, by the way, of Gaza, whatever's left of Palestine. Hamas is not a illegal entity in the UK. So despite this, as you said, it can still be covered under terrorism-related activity. So, I mean, the reason why we're raising such skepticism about the definition of terrorism-related activity, it's not even terrorism itself, it could be related to terrorism, is because of the way we already have seen, and we've covered it throughout all of our shows, how, for example, the Muslim Brotherhood, a legitimate political party, and the former, let's say, ousted government of the Egyptian state of Egypt, and they've been investigated here in the UK. Who they've fled from the oppression over there, from the military coup that took place, and the military government that's imprisoned their leaders and sentenced them, many of them, to death, even protesters, ordinary civilians. And of course, the Egyptian government also claimed that they had arrested them on terrorism charges. These were many dozens of civilian unarmed protesters. So these men from Muslim Brotherhood happen to be seeking asylum here, running away from such a tyrannical military regime, what we used to refer to as the junta, and they are being investigated themselves for apparently questions about terrorism-related activity. So you're absolutely right.
I have hundreds of questions just on that one issue of the passport seizure. I mean, we've got quite a few headlines to get through. Why don't we do this? Why don't we read out the headliners from each topic, and then we just
let's go straight. Sure.
Let's just take everything to pieces and take.
Go for it.
I mean, I'm gonna actually jump the queue, and I'm actually gonna go down to one of the towards the end of the list.
Go ahead.
One that says ransom. It makes it illegal for insurance companies to pay ransom to terrorist groups. Now, the reason why I picked this one out, because this one doesn't just affect just Muslims. Because this terrorism bill is going to affect everybody, and I think people just automatically presume that it's something just affecting Muslims.
Sure.
It will affect non-Muslims. I mean, with something like this, I mean, even if you look at journalists, when they go abroad, they have insurance policies. And they have insurance, and they have, and then they are also insured against things like this. If they get kidnapped, or if there's hostage, or if there's ransom that needs to get paid, the insurance company will fork out. So this will actually stop legitimate insurance companies that do insure people when they do go out to on fields like that. It will make it illegal for them, so they're going to get done for that as well.
Well, we've seen scenarios where, coming back to the wording of that, I mean, it says the bill makes it illegal for insurance companies to pay ransoms to terrorist groups. The key word here is ransom. It's not that the insurance companies here in the UK love to support terrorism and are friends of ISIS, for example, or Hezbollah in Lebanon. They're not really in favor of those guys. But when do we find this scenario? We found, of course, the Americans and even some British hostages who were held captive. Those who, their captors rather, those who held them were asking for money. They were asking money to secure the release of the British citizens or the American citizens, and this bill will make sure that these hostages will be killed, because you cannot secure the release of your family or your brother or your husband if he is held in captivity, ready to be beheaded.
Wasn't there examples of other countries that have actually they secured hostages back?
Yes,
and they did it very peacefully as well.
Yep, a number of European countries did do this. Even Turkey managed to secure several, let's say a couple of dozen, like 40-something prisoners were released from ISIS's captivity.
So Turkey actually managed to release 40.
Yeah, and other European, I can't remember the exact name. I don't want to say Greece or Italy without knowing for certain. I did know about this fact. France
was in the news as well with two of their journalists.
And they were able to secure their release by paying some ransoms. So this goes to show that the UK government, this bill, as you've quite rightly and succinctly pointed out, that it doesn't actually affect only Muslims. This should be something that concerns all law-concerning citizens, all those who give a damn about their rights and their civil liberties. If people say, well, I can do what I want, this is a free country. Is it really anymore? Has it been for a section of your society, a section of a community, a minority community? Well, this is going to be also reaching new levels where it will be, it will have the wide reach to touch many people outside of the Muslim community. You should have been concerned when it was happening to the Muslim community, because this is, as we know, the law enforcement services and agencies, this is how they operate. They start here and then they eventually, roll it out to all areas of law enforcement. And we've seen many examples of this. Say, for example, the Stingray hardware that they've been using to capture people's cell phone data, being apparently used to initially fight terrorism, and then they've been moving that on to fight, drug dealers, and then now it's going through some petty offences now. So yes, it means if your brother or your father or your husband is held hostage, and the hostage taker is saying, if you give us some money, then we'll release your and there's track record that they do release them upon receiving the money. It's well known, it's established, as you've mentioned. France did that, same with Turkey and others, through negotiations. Then why is the British government taking this position that they don't want the insurance companies? This is not the the families themselves. This insurance companies that will. That's why you take out insurance in the first place, right? If something horrendous or tragic were to happen, that's what the insurance companies do. They pay out in those cases. So they're stopping the insurance companies from even taking these types of measures to save the lives of British citizens. And this is what is quite appalling. And you said about how it affects non-Muslims. Well, do you remember the gentleman by the name of David Miranda? He is the partner of Glenn Greenwald, a very well-known journalist who used to write for The Guardian, and I think he has also done some work for Huffington Post, and now he's working for The Intercept online. So Glenn Greenwald, his partner was stopped in the UK using similar powers, and you're saying, hold on a minute, the bill's not passed through yet. How can he have been stopped in the UK, in the airports, and so on and so forth? Well, that's true. That brings us to another angle. They've actually had these powers for a long time. They have been exercising these powers on the Muslim community and outside the Muslim community, such as when they met David Miranda. They seized his laptop, his briefcase, his phone, and many other documents on the so-called allegations of they used the terrorism powers, anti-terror powers, to actually seize his own possessions. So it has been widely used, and it's just a case of them actually making it all legitimately legal for them to do so, and enshrined in law. So yes, this definitely affects everyone, and I believe the wider community, Muslims and non-Muslims at large, do need to wake up about this. What are the other things that you've got on the infographic in front of you?
There's a nice graphic of a police officer's hat. I haven't seen this for a long time. But it goes under the title of Expanding Prevent.
Right. And what does it say about expanding Prevent?
Well, they want to expand and institute the Prevent program as a statutory law.
Exactly.
Public officials from university, counsellors to police officers to GPs and nursery school teachers, #toddler
They will
legally have a duty to report extremists.
So Prevent was a scheme, obviously, that they were, it was, government policy, but it wasn't law. And it was being heavily pushed and has been severely criticized by non-Muslim and Muslims, across the board. And many civil liberties groups have, kind of rubbished it as a failed initiative of the government. And when you've got people saying this, that it's a failed project of the government, that it's actually caused more harm than good, and it has treated and marginalized entire Muslim communities and those outside of that. But they've actually gone ahead and made this Prevent policy part of the law, where this bill will actually implement that as law. And what you've just mentioned there is, yes, you're right, public officials from university chancellors to police officers to GPs and nursery school teachers they'll be legally bound, duty bound to report quote unquote extremists. Again, we come to the question, what on earth does that mean? Does extremist mean anybody who you feeling a little bit, nervous around because he's got a beard? Does extremist mean because you suffer from Islamophobia, fear of Islam and Muslims, and when you're feeling a little bit jittery, you make that phone call and say, yo, I think there's an extremist in our midst? Or you see a Asian-looking woman who's covered her face and she's on the tube, for example, or on the bus, and you start feeling your pangs of paranoia and deep-seated internalized terror, that you start making that phone call and say, stop the bus, I need this person taken off the bus. Is this what it means? I mean, bring up the question about, what is it? School, primary school, nursery school teachers? I mean, what is that all about?
We had a whole show dedicated to that.
That's right.
But I mean, you know what? How is a GP going to identify who could be a potential terrorist?
I mean, you're right. I mean, how does he do that? But
would he be qualified? I mean,
thank you. Now that's coming closer to the greater question.
Yeah.
Even if you were qualified, they're giving training now. It's true. School teachers now have to undertake mandatory training. I know teachers who are telling me that they are going through these kinds of training programs. I'm sure GPs and NHS staff, I've heard second-hand information that NHS staff are actually, being trained to look out for, let's say, signs of extremism and what to do. I mean, they have to do that now, because if this bill passes through, then they'll be legally bound. It will be their legal duty to report extremism. The question really is, Mr. Producer, is that the job of a GP? Is that the job of a nursery school teacher? Is that why you go to a GP? How do you feel now if you knew that there's no more patient-doctor confidentiality left anymore, or that when you go to see a GP and you happen to be, say, for example, a Sikh man or an Indian origin, you wear a turban and you grow a beard, you go there and you're mistaken by your GP to be somebody who's a devout, hardcore Islamist, basically. And instead of looking at your symptoms and trying to diagnose your condition and being concerned about your health and providing you the support that you need, he's more concerned about, well, is this guy a terrorist? Let me find out what kind of religious beliefs he has. And the way for me to find out if he's an extremist or not is to ask him about his political views. So here you are, you're expecting him to ask you about, well, when did you first contract this condition, Mr. Singh? And instead he's asking you, Mr. Singh, are you of a Sunni strain, and what do you think about September the 11th?
So basically you're going with a paper cut, but you come out with handcuffs.
Exactly. So what does that do? Do you see what I'm kind of getting at here? Muslims will be, and people of color generally, they will start to feel like, if I go there, I'm going to be perceived, I'm going to be stereotyped, I'm going to be prejudiced against, and my doctor hasn't got my health as his first interest. My doctor is going to be concerned about my political beliefs, and he may well report me. He's supposed to report on suspicion. You've seen the prevent anti-terror posters and billboards and the radio adverts. It's probably nothing, okay, but it could save lives. So if you do think somebody is a terrorist or an extremist, make that phone call. If you just see a Muslim wearing a rucksack, make that call. It's probably nothing, but what if it is a real bomb? It could save lives. So they've got some very strong, campaigns, propaganda that they're playing. Go on, you're saying even?
Now, I was just going to say, even when it comes to university, a lot of people need to ask certain questions, even hard questions, even relating to terrorism, to kind of get to the butt of the issue here, so they can kind of rebuke a lot of these extremists that are out there. So my point here is, even if you ask a legitimate question, a thinking place like a university, does that make you a prime suspect as well now?
You're right. It's an academic place. It's an academic question. In theory, you want to debate. You'd like to challenge ideas. You'd like to have your own ideas challenged, tested even, if you'd like, proven wrong to the extent, no problem. But it seems that if you were to exhibit any kind of questioning of that nature or that line of thinking, considering, let's assume that you're not white, then you would be probably shortlisted or profiled and added to a list of names that the lecturers have to then report to the police and counter-terrorism officers. So You're absolutely right. And then, we don't know where to start when it comes to the nursery children. I mean, what on earth are you talking about? So the nursery wants to hold a Christmas party, and most kids obviously won't have an issue with this. If not all kids, even Muslim kids from devout families will probably have no problem with it. Children are that way not informed about the differences between Christianity and their own personal faith. But sometimes parents might, what's the word I'm looking for, exercise their, justified right to say, son or daughter, when it comes to Christmas time, Muslims are not allowed to actually participate in, Christian celebrations. So we'll withdraw you, or you can still go, but, don't participate in the actual celebrations. If the child then does say this at school, then is his year 5 or year 6 tutor, whatever her or his name may be, Gavin, Angie, whatever her names might be, will they then be now required? According to the bill, yes, they'd be very much legally bound to now report that this child has exhibited some signs of what potentially may be extremism or some sort of extremist grooming in the family. So then they'll have social services informed. Social services will probably come and visit your property and address with counter-terrorism officers just to double check. Oh, we're here just to just to make sure everything's fine. And and they go there and they find that maybe you're training your children. Out of the 30 days of Ramadan, maybe you're training them to keep 1 or 2 fasts at that age. Obviously, by the age of 10, Islam does obligate that children of that age need to start keeping their fasts like every adult. Now, that's correct. So all of this is happening. There's a couple of other items. It says here temporary exclusion. What else is happening? So it says here, this gives the Home Secretary power to issue temporary exclusion orders, TEOs. And this prevents British nationals from returning to the UK if they are again, quote unquote, suspected of terrorism-related activity. So if you've gone abroad and you're just under suspicion, so then we won't even let you in. So this again comes to the concept of, it seems that this bill presumes you're guilty until you can prove your innocence. Then it will let you have your passport back. Then you might even come back to your home country, okay, and will treat you like an equal citizen. So this kind of thing automatically makes the assumption that you are guilty until you can prove your innocence. And you know what it takes to prove your innocence? A lot of money, a lot of time, all right, a legal team, a media campaign, and ordinary Muslims will never be able to...
They don't have access to that.
Don't have access to that, that's right. A minority community like that will never be able to get hold of those types of resources. And although, yes, there are civil liberties groups who are doing fantastic work, I must say, and they will, I do encourage, again, I have no vested interest in any of these civil liberties organizations. I don't work for them. I do work for our community through our radio station in securing their rights. So if you do find yourself in these kinds of trouble, then definitely contact your civil liberties organization like Cage, or even report things to Mend, or try to get in touch with lawyers that you trust who understand these kinds of counter-terrorism and security bills. Definitely don't be speaking on your own to the police unless you have the legal advice that you're entitled to. And having said that, in some instances you're not even allowed. If you're arrested on these types of bills and the kind of wide-ranging powers that these bills give the law enforcement agencies, you're not even allowed to get access to legal advice. And it's so detailed. Again, go to Cage, check out their articles, their archives on what kind of powers they give, that when they cite the terrorism bill, for example, then a lot of the liberties that you think you are automatically entitled to, such as legal advice, your right to remain silent, a lot of these things are completely taken away from you as soon as they cite these types of bills. Last one I'm going to talk about here is TPIMs. Okay, so TPIMs. We had a brother who, by the name of Kerry, an English brother, a white brother who reverted to Islam, and he was himself subject to a TPIM. What's a TPIM? Well, it's basically a terrorism prevention investigatory measure. No, notice the word investigatory measure. So TPIMs are a kind of law that they throw on you that limits your movement. If they suspect you, okay, of any kind of terrorism-related activity within the UK. And we spoke directly to this brother, and that show is uploaded on YouTube. Go check it out. And the brother explained that he was subject to this kind of like a house arrest scenario with lots of curfew, rules and conditions. He's probably like on tag, I'm guessing, if those of you who know what kind of the ankle band things are. And in the end, eventually he was allowed, the TPM was lifted from him, and he wasn't even charged for any kind of terrorism related activity. It was complete nonsense. And to the extent that he said when he had to sit in front of these, he went through the legal process, and throughout the whole stage he didn't even know what the evidence was that they had against him, for which they were holding him for. Okay, you can find some of his videos online. Go again to their websites. Okay, his name is Kerry Bullivant. Okay, that's Ceerrie, and his second name is Bullivant. If I'm probably mispronouncing his name, I do apologize. It's Bullivant. Okay, we need to move on from this story, and
I'm just going to say we've actually got a clip to play.
Yeah, we've got a couple of clips, 2 clips. They're very short. So, brothers and sisters, do bear with us, because this is some very interesting information. Are we going with Peter Hitchens to begin with?
We are indeed, yes.
Right, so who is Peter Hitchens, you might be asking? Well, Peter Hitchens is actually an English journalist, and he's an author. He's written several books, The Abolition of Britain, The Rage Against God, and The War We Never Fought. And he's actually a journalist. He writes for the Mail on Sunday. He was formerly a foreign correspondent abroad. He's even won the Orwell Prize. So Hitchens is actually, obviously he's not a Muslim. And Hitchens is concerned about this CTSB, the Counter-terrorism and Security Bill. Let's go and hear what Mr. Hitchens has to say.
I'm not convinced that there is this famous trade-off between liberty and security we're being told about all the time. Liberty is absolute. If you give it away for any purpose, it's gone forever. And what this bill does is it simply takes away liberty, and it takes away freedom from surveillance in return for what are mere promises of increased security. Why should we agree to this so readily? Once you fall into the hands of the state, you may be, and people have been, completely innocent of anything. And because of mistaken identity or because of some panic or other, they can still be plunged into a netherworld of Kafkaesque persecution simply because the state has the power to do that to them. I think giving the state that power, giving it the power to presume guilt, is the first step towards totalitarianism. The presumption of innocence is far more valuable than any other single aspect of English liberty, and anything which eats away at it must be resisted. The fact is, it's a general menace to anybody whom an all-powerful state should happen to take against, and particularly its proposals for effective surveillance of speech, and those are the most remarkable ones in universities. These are the most extraordinary increases of state power over things where the state has no business at all. And given the state's very considerable multicultural prejudices, I think a lot of quite conservative people will find that they may get caught up in its tangles.
Some brilliant points there by Peter Hitchens. And you've heard his position. It's quite a principled stance. And it is in the name of liberty. He says liberty is absolute. There shouldn't never be a trade-off to gain security by giving away your liberty. That should never be the case. And he did say that a lot of people will find themselves in a pickle if they are campaigning for greater securities by taking away people's liberties. And one of the liberties that you will be, he talked about privacy invasion, and you can see here that the bill that we're talking about actually says that the bill will require communications service providers, say for example your internet service provider, your broadband service that you've got, okay, or your mobile phone contract provider, whoever they are, Virgin, whoever you're with, 3, this bill will require them to retain, i.e. keep a record of all your communications data that will link an IP address with the person using the service. So whatever you be sending on your text messages, writing up on your Facebook or on whatever forum you commented, or you might have even liked a video. We know some individuals have come under some serious fire simply because they went and pressed that thumbs up icon for maybe a video speech made by Imam Anwar al-Awlaki or by whoever. These things are considered nowadays, can fall under the undefined scope of terrorism-related activity.
Okay, I've got this burning question that I need to say by playing devil's advocate, and I don't willingly want to play this role because I know it's a really silly question, but it has to be said.
Let's hear your... Don't say you're a devil's advocate here, mate, because I know these are your own personal views.
Okay, fine. Okay,
go on.
If this is the role play we're going to play, then yes, it is my very opinion. But okay, if I have nothing to hide, then I have no worries with the government doing what they need to do to stop any kind of terrorism-related activities that happen.
Then okay. So you're saying you've got nothing to hide, then you're all...
If it
you're not opposed to this kind
means
of...
that I'm going to be safer, if it means that I'm going to be better off, if it means that I can go about doing my daily business without a fear or that somebody's going to do something to me on a scale like that, then why not? I've got nothing to hide. I've got nothing to lose.
Sure. So that's an interesting angle, and I have heard this before. And a number of things can be said about that. And just like you've described, you've caricatured it, obviously, and we know those aren't your personal views. I was just joking. But that is a kind of sentiment that we do hear often when this discussion arises. And automatically, just in your words, you laid out the premise that this will make us safer or feel safer, and it will make the world that we live in a safer place. And I think that's disputable, easily disputable. In fact, there's evidence to the contrary that all of these powers haven't actually stopped any of the kind of outrages that we have seen. For example, even in Paris. These powers, as I've said already, that they have been exercising these powers anyway. But they just needed the law to say very clearly that they absolutely have the right to do so, because they were being challenged in courts and so on places for exercising these powers. So it hasn't actually reduced the rate of let's say violent attacks here or abroad. So that's the premise, and I think that's a false premise that you automatically feel safer, that this kind of power will actually even give, or increase the level of safety and actually help in the fight against terrorism. Rather, you find that these civil liberties groups, mosques and imams, those who are against terrorism and extremism, what you would find is that they've been arguing, and many campaigners who have openly said that actually, many non-Muslims have openly said that actually the reason why there is such a high rate of terrorism occurring right now is because of foreign policy, and that's euphemism for Western wars and violence and bloodshed in the Muslim world, killing civilians in the Muslim world. Foreign policy is a euphemism, and I often tend to move away from describing it as just foreign policy. I mean, we're talking about savagery on untold scales. We're talking about the CIA report being leaked, and we're waiting for the Chilcot inquiry to get Tony Blair to answer the question about abuses during the war in Iraq, and even the very the very premise for the war in Iraq itself. But we know very well that the terrorists or the acts of terrorism that have been committed, whenever they've been committed, they've always left, let's say, a note. I'm just using that proverbially. They've left a note saying that we're doing this because we want freedom for Palestine, or we're doing this in return for your soldiers' crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. It is not the fact that these terrorists hate British way of life or the white skin or freedom. They're doing it because they're heavily aggrieved. That is not to say that we're justifying acts of violence. What we are saying is this is the reason why they are doing it. There's a cause and effect here. So again, your argument, I know it's not your argument, but that argument assumes that there's very good reason to give the authorities these powers, and that these powers will actually make them safer. And I haven't even scratched the surface of that, refuting that argument, for example. Another one is, you've got nothing to hide. You say that, or somebody would say that. Is that really the case? Seriously? Is that the state of society today, that men and women are not embarrassed? I mean, to show, let's say, personal pictures that they've taken perhaps of themselves. Non-Muslims, perhaps they've got pictures of their girlfriend or their boyfriend. You want that kind of stuff all being logged and being trawled through by some sweaty, spectacle-eyed men, eating biscuits on, expenses given by you taxpayers, and they're going through all of this, eating pizza in the back of a van outside your estate. Oh, come on. You're telling me you've got nothing to hide. You've got little children. And we know, it's well documented, it's been reported widely, that there have been ministers who have been abusing children. There have been people in Westminster in the past, and there have been celebrities in media who have been abusing children. There are people who are supposed to be in the law enforcement agencies here in the UK who are responsible for fighting paedophilia. They are in the department that's supposed to prevent paedophilia. They themselves have been found guilty for, for paedophilia, for enjoying child paedophilia or child pornography, if there's such a word as that.
I have rattled a cage, haven't I?
You definitely have, because I find that quite a absurd argument. It's like saying, I'm going to leave the doors open and the keys, I'm going to throw it away. I'm take the doors off the hinges and I'm going to do whatever I want in my house. I've got nothing to hide. Let them come and do whatever they want. Now, privacy is a universal liberty and right that should not be given away so flippantly on this kind of ignorant attitude. And there's no real other way to describe this. Everybody's got things to hide, not because it's wrong, but because it's your personal private choice to keep things private to yourself. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So we know people, and it's open for abuse. What I'm trying to explain is that you're doing this on the basis of trust, that the police will be 100% trustworthy when it comes to this. Yet we know that experts and officials, people who are trustworthy in their independent investigation, have declared the police to be institutionally racist. So you're going to tell me that these people are the right kind of people to be given powers to abuse in this way? Come on, guys, wake up and really smell the coffee.
I really want to prolong this
conversation.
I do want to carry on, but
there's one clip. I know, before you move on to your next agenda, Mr. Producer, you are the boss, and there's one final clip. You want to make a comment?
I was just going to say, before we go into the clip, there is one kind of pressing thing there that's actually got me worried about this bill. Just before we go into the clip, is the actual speed of it. I mean, it's unprecedented. I mean, it's only been a few months, and these kind of things take years and months before they can get anything through. But where's the fire?
There isn't any. I mean, the fire that they're presenting is obviously things like the Paris attacks, and they're trying to take advantage and exploit. Really, that's the word. I mean, they're exploiting people's, let's say, natural fears, and not just some people's natural fears. There are a lot of people here who have a phobia of Islam and Muslims because of the way the media and government have been rattling on about Muslim terrorism and Islamic terrorism, and how there is a rise in anti-Semitism. So naturally, they are really feeding on the fear and paranoia of a lot of people, which is quite unfounded, as we've seen. The rate of deaths as a result of terrorism is quite low compared to, let's say, the rate of deaths, as a result of more mundane things, from driving accidents to obesity to even like dangerous diseases like cancer and stuff like that. So really, when I say dangerous, I mean alcohol-related deaths and stuff like that. So we can see here the government is doing what government people do. If you were in government, you'd love all the power in the world. It's what people in power, power corrupts. So when you're in a position of power, you have to resist the will to wield this kind of level of authority. It's a type of a power and ego game, and they love to control. And this is extremely, extremely dangerous for those people who are on all sides of the political spectrum. Whether you're a conservative, whether you're right wing, surely you must be a libertarian nonetheless. You have to believe in the liberties and the civil liberties that you enjoy, which makes your country, according to you, so great. Are you willing to give up all of that so that a false fear can be dealt with? I'm going to quickly read a couple of texts before we go to the the clip that we've got ready for you, if that's okay, Mr. Producer. Yeah, I haven't screened these, so bear with me. I'm just going to read it straight off the bat. It says here that this bill sounds like the law that will prove that Muslims in the UK are second-class citizens. Muslims will be living in fear of looking the wrong way. Okay, interesting. They didn't say his name or her name. Another text reads that the legislation doesn't create a long list of new offences. They're not needed. Instead, it aims to disrupt, in inverted commas, and counter the activity of suspects by other means. Very interesting remark there from one of our listeners. Again, he or she did not leave her name. They seem to know what they're talking about, whoever these brothers and sisters are. Would love for you to call in on 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. Keep them views coming in, even if you feel that sometimes we're getting it wrong or some corrections need to be made. Oftentimes, I'm sure I regularly make blunders in maybe quoting, misquoting, or attributing quotes to the wrong people or something like that.
And there must be a devil's advocate out there that can do a better
job than than the producer. That's right, because I just completely destroyed him right there. So but very interesting. He said they didn't actually create a long list of new offences, because that would mean you'd have to be found guilty of a little defined offence, a written description of a criminal offence. That's how most laws are used. That's how most, let's say, convictions are secured against, let's say, a suspect. Now, this person who's texted in made an excellent point that they're not actually creating a long list of new offences. What they're doing is they're just giving you a very broad, ambiguous, vague kind of, let's say, term, and they're just and throwing that out to capture as many people as possible. He says here that they're not needed to create a long list of new offences. Instead, it aims to disrupt and counter the activity of suspects by other means. So everybody becomes effectively a suspect. And as we've already given some examples with David Miranda and others, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Muslim. This will touch and reach people outside, and has already touched people outside of the Muslim community. And it's a shame that we Muslims have to say that to our non-Muslim community, who are the majority in this country, the English people, because it already implies that non-Muslims actually don't care that if it were to happen to a minority community like the black community or the Jewish community or the Muslim community. They only take notice and start to make noise when it happens to everybody else outside of the minority communities, when they seem to be in trouble. But I don't think that's a fair assessment, because I know, as we've already heard from Peter Hitchens, and we've heard from many other civil liberties groups who have challenged this, and they are resisting this. Let's go quickly to the clip, and before you press the play button, I want to say this is a clip from, again, hashtag Stop the Bill, STOPTHEBILL, Stop the Bill. This bill, the CTSB bill, and he's going to give us a few words of what he thinks this bill can do. He's Asim Qureshi, who's got a legal background, and he's currently employed as a senior researcher at Cage, where he has led investigations into Pakistan, Bosnia, Kenya, Sudan, Sweden, USA, and around the UK. With his team of researchers, he has written and published many reports exposing the use of unlawful detention, rendition, I'm going to insert the word kidnap, government kidnap, and to read on, and to torture in the war on terror. So this is Asim Qureshi, and we're going to hear about the bill from Asim Qureshi.
The government is currently trying to push through a piece of legislation which serves to be, after a decade of the war on terror, one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation this country has ever seen. Once this bill passes, the Counter-terrorism and Security Bill, public sector workers will not only be required to report on their own colleagues, but they'll also be required to report on nursery level students, school children, university pupils, and even doctors will be required to report on their own patients. We're entering a time when people with cultural and religious differences who don't understand one another will end up over-reporting each other in the faint hope that they might have reported on something that may have possibly stopped somebody from becoming a terrorist. The problem is, nothing is defined within this legislation. And what we're going to see is some of the worst excesses of over-reporting, of unlawful detention, of people basically being criminalized because of their thoughts and beliefs. If this bill goes through, then the tolerance that this country has known for so many generations will be completely destroyed with one single piece of legislation more than any other. So we have to work against it and stop it right now. Stop the bill.
Stop the bill. That's what Brother Asim had to say, a senior researcher at Cage. And, he's painted a very dark picture there. And unfortunately, that is a reality. It's not something that he's exaggerating. And I do feel everybody in the UK should be taking this extremely seriously. And I'm really glad to hear somebody like a Christian, for example. Peter Hitchens is a well-known, outspoken Christian, and here he is talking about, and he's not, by any length of the definition, a leftist or anything like that. He's quite conservative, so he's still realizing the danger of this bill. And he's encouraging people to stop the bill, and there needs to be a concerted effort. But on that point, because we have to finish there regarding this bill for tonight, because we have really run out of time. There's no other way to describe that. What can we say about this? The bill, Mr. Producer, we're hearing ramblings that this bill is already done. So is there any point? What should be the focus now? Where should the community, the wider community, be exerting their effort and energies, since it seems that they are adamant on passing this bill? The Lords and others, will be probably pushing this through in any time. Would we say that it's all is lost, or is there still something else that can be done? Is there What do you think? Mr. Producer, and all our listeners as well. 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. What do you think?
There are campaigns that are going on right now. Really, really want to kind of push to stop this bill at the moment. At the moment, the only thing you can do right now is to get involved. And that's the only thing I can personally recommend as well. There are online petitions at the moment.
That's right.
People
stopthebill.co.uk, if I'm correct, yeah?
Yes. A lot of people dismiss these petitions, and I think this is one of those petitions that really everybody needs to take heed and really do jump on the bandwagon and really do get involved with this. So
you're right. Definitely, that's one of the things that people should be doing, is getting involved, getting on board, seeing, looking at some of the guidance. Stop the Bill's got some excellent kind of pointers there. The petitions out there as well. But also, I would say, maybe I'm a little bit more positive, or let's say adventurous in my hopes in resisting these kinds of draconian powers, far-reaching powers, powers open to abuse. I think we should be able to resist it, and all effort should be expended to kind of legally challenge the letter of the law, have it reviewed even and overturned. People may be guffawing or laughing off their chair right now, saying what a naive person you are, Mr. Ahmed, on Middle Path Radio. Once it's law, you can't overturn it.
You got to get the pronunciation right,
Mr. Ahmed. They'll be falling off their chair laughing, thinking, you really think you can challenge laws once they're passed? Well, I think the law says that it can, and it can be reviewed if there's enough public interest and concern. If there is abuse of these powers happening, which we've already seen that there is, then I think we should be challenging it for sure, and every effort should be made to try to have these kinds of laws overturned. Now that might be too optimistic for some people, maybe even completely impossible, because I don't know the law. I'm not a legal expert. But I think the freedoms in this country and the kind of system that we have may well allow that kind of optimism to come true. But on a more realistic level, perhaps for others, what we can start doing is getting other people to become aware that the Muslim community has been subjected to these kinds of difficult laws. They've been suffering at the hands of these kinds of invasive laws, and now it does actually affect many other people, and it will affect everyone. And so you need to get involved, get active. We need to raise awareness. This is one of the things that we should be doing, is raising awareness about this bill and the kind of implications that this bill brings. And lastly, maybe even letting people know, that this bill is too vague, and it gives way too many powers that are easily abusable, and that Muslims should not be reported on, or anyone should not be suspected, on the basis of, a vague, undefined, quote-unquote terrorism-related activity. So what I'm saying is people should be, confident not to report. GPs should be getting together and saying, look, this is not my job, this is not my remit. You guys are the police. We pay you your salaries for a reason. Okay, you take taxes for this. You're supposed to make this country a safer place. I'm supposed to concentrate on health. Teachers and their unions need to be coming out and saying openly and vocally that, hello, we reject this. We, wholeheartedly, unequivocally reject the idea that when I go to teach people and talk about politics, international affairs, talk to them about or do a degree or an A-level on critical thinking, for example, that I don't encourage people to speak their mind and their thoughts, or to even play devil's advocate, for example, and to challenge these ideas. This will stifle, just the very freedom to think in my classroom. Teachers need to be coming out, and certainly primary school, staff need to be saying, look, this is absurd, this is unacceptable. So we do need to be getting people to take the attitude that it's not right. We shouldn't be dobbing people in for things that they haven't done, for things that we don't even know that they're even doing, simply because I'm scared, just because I've got a sense of fear that, or I'm nervous about something. That shouldn't be justified reason for me to start reporting people. So it's really a difficult one, and I think the community need to pull together, and we need to learn how to ride this wave. I'm going to read a couple of more texts and then finish on this agenda. It says here that, from Brother Bilal, it says here, will Theresa May be offering shop an alleged terrorist for cash payments? So again, will Theresa May be offering shop an alleged terrorist for cash payments? I think what the brother is saying here is, will people be getting money for reporting what they consider to be terrorism-related activity? I think they already have policies like this in place. I think they are recruiting people inside of these minority communities, whether it be from the Arab community, Somalian community, the Bangladeshi community, the Pakistani community. They are heavily recruiting individuals from there. They are giving large sums of taxpayer money to people who, haven't probably not got the best interests of the community at heart, and are working for the authorities to kind of implement these kinds of draconian powers and laws. Another text reads here, once local authorities find out how to use these new powers, it will be curtains for people who put their rubbish in the wrong bin or fail to pick up after their dogs, says Brother Ruhel. Let me read that once more. Once local authorities, i.e. councils, find out how to use these new powers, it will be curtains for people who put their rubbish in the wrong bin or fail to pick up after their dogs. So these powers will be used to kind of pick, let's say, catch people doing all sorts of non-violent, non-serious crime. So and there have been some instances where some of these very strong powers have been used for less serious crime. Okay, so Brother Ruel, thanks for that text, and Brother Bilal for the earlier text as well. When civil security goes too far, you get authoritarianism, where government can throw aside our individual liberties and rights in the name of security. What we are told, our fences can quickly become our own cages. What a brilliant text message there from Brother Joseph, our regular texter on Middle Path Radio. Another text comes in, says, Salams, presenter and guests. In my opinion, MPs, I think this is from, I don't know, that's probably a mistake. Okay, some text messages here. I think I do need to screen some of them. But excellent points from some of our brothers and sisters who have been texting in. Really, is this one on the... Let me have a quick work on the basis that if you haven't done anything wrong. Okay, so it says here, let's be honest. No matter what changes are made, someone isn't going to be happy. Work on the basis that if you haven't done anything wrong, aren't mixing with those with extremist views and wanting to harm our fellow countrymen and women, you have nothing to fear of any changes to legislation. So he is making that argument that you made earlier, and like I said, this is a common view. It's a misunderstood view, I'm afraid. It is misinformed, and I would say quite right, naive. Maybe I did describe it actually as ignorant, to be honest with you, and I don't want to go through that argument all over. I mean, it's easily you can dismantle that point of view easily. As Brother Joseph said in his text, you know, your own garden fence can eventually effectively become your own cage. So what you're doing in your own home literally becomes something that is subject to surveillance, and everything becomes evidence to be used against you. That's literally what it is. Anything you say, do in your own privacy, in your own home, in your private communications can be used against you, okay, in a court of law. And you know how easy it is, guys, brothers and sisters. If somebody's got it in for you, if the law enforcement agencies have got it in for you, or say, for example, you're a former offender, you're an ex-con, or you're a reformed, rehabilitated ex-prisoner. You come out, but you're still on the system, right? These people will use all of their powers to make, and many people have reported that this is what happens to them. They are not left alone. They try to make a new start in their life, try to turn things around, but we find time after time again that the authorities will never let them be and constantly treat them as suspect criminals, and never letting them kind of get up on their feet, making life very hard for them. You know, this is the kind of danger that these kinds of powerful bills allow. There's one last text I'm going to read, and I'm quickly going to move on from there, because we want to talk about the American sniper. We've really overrun our time. Shall we defer to another date altogether?
I mean, this is the sniper will. I mean, this is pretty hot. This
yeah, that's a big one. I really.
We're getting a lot of text messages and emails regarding.
Yeah.
It, so,
all right, let me read this one last text, and maybe we start a little bit on. Is that what you're saying? Should we start a little bit on the American sniper? Or
I say let's give it a miss for today.
Miss for today, yeah. And cover it properly in another show. Yeah. Okay, so let me just read this final text. You state we are legally innocent until proven guilty. This is true, which is why they would not be jailed or charged until enough evidence has been found on them. Police stop and search powers rely on a more guilty until proven innocent idea, however. Knives and drugs are often found. Surely you would want those people put before our judicial system, says Sister Rukshana. Well, I'm not sure if I understood this text. You state that we are legally innocent until proven guilty. This is true, which is why they would not be jailed, charged until enough evidence has been found on them. Police stop and search powers rely on a more guilty until proven innocent idea. Okay, so she's saying that there's other powers that the police do have, and it presumes that a person is guilty until they are innocent. But regardless, I see what you're saying, Sister Rukhsana. Thank you for the text. But I'm not sure if you should be in whether we should be taking that position that it's already happening. Okay, and oftentimes it works. I think that's a dangerous kind of approach to take, because we know, especially, I mean, you've just kind of dug yourself one there, because police stop and search powers have been widely abused. I mean, go ask our brothers and sisters and friends in humanity from the Afro-Caribbean community how they've suffered at the hands of these stop and search powers, and how many people actually were completely innocent and their lives ruined. I hear directly from colleagues or colleagues of friends and family who tell us that because they were black but disabled, but he's doing a wealthy job, a well-paid job, sorry. He gets stopped daily, every day, on this presumption, Sister Rukhsana, that you've described, that they're presumed guilty. He is presumed guilty until found innocent, and oftentimes they do turn up knives and guns and whatnot. You'll be surprised how many kids and young people and elderly people actually don't carry guns and knives out there. These kind of stereotypes we don't have any statistics to kind of support this kind of a claim. I do dispute it, and the example I was given is anecdotal evidence, of course, but this gentleman, he decided never to drive again. He's very wealthy, he's more than capable of driving, despite being suffering from a disability, and being very wealthy to own a let's say an expensive car. But he was getting stopped sometimes more than once a day, every day. And he realized, you know what, I'd rather not be able to drive ever again, instead of being put through this kind of humiliation and this kind of indignity. So people have been going through this, and these kinds of powers have been abused. Yes, you're right. I mean, it's not just it's not just the counter-terrorism bills. These kinds of powers and have been abused in other aspects of law enforcement. But just on a point of principle, on a philosophical angle, my sister, is that really the correct position from a legal aspect that we want for this country to go down? Presuming guilty. What if we do turn up knives and guns when we stop them? Even when they stop you, they have to give you clear reason as to why they're stopping you, why they suspect you, whether you fit a description or not. And we've seen even then there have been, widespread abuse of these kinds of powers. So I really welcome your text message and your views on that, but I do think perhaps that on this occasion you are mistaken. Thank you for that. We need to move on. Any more texts, I do apologize if I can't read them. Do keep them coming in. Go use our Twitter handle, @MiddlePathRadio, and send us your messages there to continue the discussion on this. We can't continue any further. We'd love to talk about American Sniper, but I had no idea that we could really get a lot of it. And it's true. I mean, this is such a huge thing that's happening in the UK, the CTSB. We needed to give it this time, and I do apologize for those who were, and I'm really excited to talk about this American Sniper thing. It's very eye-opening, and some of it is quite deplorable, to be honest with you. Extremely, I condemn. I'm going to take the opportunity here, like the imams of community. I would condemn the content and the glorification of this person who is known to be having some very abhorrent views, some dangerous views, and a film that has given rise to publicly announcing people's Islamophobic views. I utterly condemn that. And I think the releasing that video at this time, when Islamophobia is a serious issue, was very responsible of whether it was Hollywood or whoever whoever really released it in the first place. I think it's absolutely irresponsible. The kind of hate that we've seen on social media as a result, inspired by this film, literally. I mean, and this is accredited by the haters themselves. They said, after watching this film, I feel like killing Arabs. I got more, I hate Muslims and stuff like that after watching this film. I got a deep found respect for people who kill, stuff like that. So, I can't get my teeth into that one today. I know, Mr. Producer, this was really something that you were proper revving up to get stuck into.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I want to get into this one, because when I saw the Twitter's responses it made me go. I was really mad.
The open racism was just unbelievable.
And the worst thing is, it's
but people are talking about anti-Semitism. It's okay. I mean, people are busy concerned about anti-Semitism. There's bare tweets about killing Muslims and Arabs. If there were tweets like this about Jews, then that would have been a serious international crisis. And apparently it is. And that's why they're talking about anti-Semitism and not Islamophobia, despite this level of Islamophobic ranting going on, and genuine acting out their Islamophobic hatred, from throwing grenades at mosques to even stabbing Muslims to death. We are seeing this kind of thing happening across the world. Yet here we have in the UK people talking about the serious concerns for anti-Semitism, and more power to you. But it shouldn't be a narrow concern for only one section of British society, and it should certainly be not only representative of everyone who are suffering from hate crime, but it should be proportionate to the levels of hate crime that the communities, the minorities are experiencing. Without any further ado, Mr. Producer, are we good to go?
I have to read out this last text before.
Yes, sir, by all means.
I think this will kind of like set the tone for the end of the show, but this actually is from Anonymous. It actually says, sorry, I still feel more threatened by the Home Secretary and the police having extra powers than by extremists.
What a fantastic point. And I would add here, in the revelation from the CIA reports about the way they've been abusing prisoners, torturing them, sexually abusing some of them, many of them even, men, that is, those kind of reports. After that, we heard our sister Yvonne Ridley, a former journalist for one of the well-known papers in the UK, currently still working in the media. Yvonne Ridley, she tweeted, she's famous because she was held captive by the Taliban. She said, after the CIA report and the revelations of what they did, I'm completely grateful to the fact that I was actually held captive by the world's most brutal regime, the Taliban, instead of the CIA. She's grateful that it was the Taliban that kept her, because she reported in her book that she was treated quite honorably and quite respectively, to a standard that probably even meets or bests the Geneva Conventions on how to treat prisoners and captives. So she said, she was grateful that the Taliban were the ones who held her captive, and it wasn't the CIA. God knows, had she been kept as a suspect of terrorism by the CIA, then what would have happened to them? We know most of the people who were in Guantanamo or Bagram, they have been released. They have been released after years and years of severe abuse. That's another kind of worms.
That's another topic we should get into.
And we should get into that. And I'm going to say this final word. Your Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS. This is a man who also was in the hands of the Americans in a prison where they were doing these types of mistreatment. And now look what that has caused him, how he has, what's caused him to behave in this way. I mean, you can put the two and two together and figure it out for yourself. You do the math.
So somebody who gets tortured by the CIA ends up like that.
Ends up hating the Americans.
And somebody who gets
that's wholly illogical, right?
And someone who gets kidnapped by
why would you hate?
Comes out as a peace advocate and a peace ambassador.
What a beautiful way to end the show. On that bombshell, we're going to say Assalaamu'alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.